Hey, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the latest episode of the Men's Mysteries. Today, what I thought I would do is talk about a concept that I think is really important in men's work, which is about reparenting our inner child. Let's be honest here. A lot of times growing up, we weren't necessarily saddled with the ideal parents who knew how to give us some boundaries, knew how to teach us life lessons, but were also there for us in a loving and warm way. I certainly didn't have that. So I think that one of the challenges that I find that occurs in men's work is that there's a real need to reparent our inner child. A lot of times our emotional triggers and our traumas and our responses are basically the inner child or the shadow lashing out at the world around you and or lashing out in response to something that someone's done where it's triggered something, or it's hit on a trauma pattern or something else along those lines. And when we don't look at or address those particular issues, what ends up happening is we're letting our inner child run our lives. And this is when our lives are run by reaction. So what I found is really essential is that we have to learn how to make friends with our inner child, connect with the part of ourselves that is running the show, and figure out like what it really needs from us. And a lot of times what it needs is to be reparented. There's the way I look at it is that your inner child is basically looking to you to provide the parenting that you didn't receive as a kid. So you basically have to become the ideal parent for yourself that you didn't get when you were a kid. And this is really important because this is how we break the patterns in our lives around situations where we're letting somebody else call the shots and we're responding to, the voices the voices that say like, oh, hey, you're a disappointment or you're not good enough or something like that. Usually that is tapes that we have taken on from people that are no longer in our lives, or if they are in our lives, they may not even fully realize the damage they did. And really, at the end of the day, do we want those people running the show? Do we want to be listening to those inner voices that tell us that we're not good enough or that we can't do, the things that we need to be doing in our lives? We don't. Instead, we want to reparent ourselves, and reparenting ourselves means that we are consciously choosing to create a relationship with ourselves that is real and viable, and we can do it in a way that is loving, where we are repatterning our lives in a very real and conscious way. We're creating the opportunity to become better parents for ourselves. So how do you do it? Well, what I look at is I like to look at the situation itself. What is causing the trigger? What is causing the trauma? What is it that I'm reacting to? And what I have to ask myself is, am I responding or am I reacting? Reaction, I'm not in control. What's happening is I'm reacting to a situation and basically letting the shots get called by someone or something else. A response, I'm stepping back and I'm evaluating the situation and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, what's the outcome that I want to have happen here? What is it that I want to manifest? And it's really important because we want to consciously choose our outcomes. The outcomes that we don't choose, if we're reacting, we're not choosing the outcomes in a way that is really powerful or meaningful. And this is what causes a lot of the issues for men, because what they're doing is they're reacting with their inner child and they're lashing out and responding, but not in a conscious way. They're not choosing the outcome. And so if we're going to choose an outcome, a good formula that we can use is we can say event plus the outcome or plus the response equals the outcome that I want to create. So an event happens. what is the actual response that I want to accomplish? Part of what we're going to do is we're going to choose it on the basis of the outcome. What's the outcome? What is it that I really want to have happen here? So let's say you get into a fight with your partner and your partner says something, and that something triggers the not good enough message for your inner boy. You could lash out, you could shut down, or you can take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Do it again a couple times. By doing that, what you're doing is you're calming your nervous system, and you're giving yourself time to think and to feel and to like how you want to respond. You're parenting your inner child, because what you're doing is you're saying to your inner child, let's slow things down. Let's slow this down. And then you can say, well, what's the outcome I want? I can't control the other person, right? But what I can do is I can control myself. I can control the way that I choose to show up. And as a result, I can purposely create a better conversation. One of the things that I tell my clients is that, like, when you're in a situation where, someone's triggered you, look at it as an opportunity to explore what that trigger is. The trigger usually has nothing to do with that person, or if it has something to do with that person, it has more to do with what that person is dinging on for that inner child. And the inner child is responding or reacting the way that they're reacting because they haven't had a chance to repattern that behavior. So by taking the deep breaths in and breathing out through the nose, we're slowing things down. We're giving ourselves time to parent the inner child. And what we can just say is, well, what's the response that you really want to have happen? What's going to help you feel validated? And at the same time, help you create a better outcome. So going back to the argument example, I start having an argument with somebody. I take a deep breath in. I breathe out. I take another deep breath in. I breathe out. I take another deep breath in. I breathe out. And what I do is I choose the response. I choose what I'm going to say. I choose what I'm going to do. And I don't do it from a place where I'm letting myself be controlled by the emotions. I acknowledge the emotions. It's important to acknowledge the emotions. They're there for a reason, right? They're telling us something. It's kind of like similar to along the lines of like anxiety. Anxiety is there for a reason. It's signaling something. It's telling us something. So, you might have an anger, but like an emotion of anger come up. Well, anger is saying, hey, my boundaries are getting crossed. So, and hey, acknowledge that. It's important too. The question is, how do I want to respond to that? Do I want to just yell? Do I want to throw something against the wall? Not really. Doesn't really help. It actually escalates the situation. If instead what I do is I say, I'm feeling angry right now. I need to take a few moments to think about this further, go for a little walk. Then you're choosing a better outcome. You're choosing an outcome where you're choosing to look at the situation and say, how do I want this situation to show up? What is it I want to do to take care of myself in this situation? What is it I want to do to take care of the other person? And this is really the sign of what it looks like when we are operating from a place of embodied, mature masculinity. We're not reacting to the inner child. We're responding to the inner child and to the other person or the situation. And we're choosing a very intentional response. We're creating that response in a very purposeful manner. So we slow down. We may take that walk. Or we might say, I'm feeling upset in this moment. And what I want to do is I want to look at how we can address this situation. What's going on your end? Here's what's going on my end. And see what happens. And, I say that now, and I'm recording a video, right? In the heat of the moment, it's going to come out a bit different. The key thing is to remember, that moment doesn't have to dictate your reality. That moment is just a moment. And I think a lot of times what men do is they forget that they have better choices than just pushing anger down or pushing other emotions down or lashing out with anger or whatever else. They have the choice, the power of choice to decide, how am I going to respond? That is the most important power that you can have. One of the ways that I like to reparent my inner child is to remind myself that I have the ability to respond. I have responsibility. Now, when we think about the word responsibility, that can come off like, oh, well, what does that really mean? Well, in this case, it means that I am responsible for the way that I show up. I am responsible for how I communicate. I am responsible for the way that I choose to handle things. I can allow myself to acknowledge the feelings in the moment. I can allow myself to recognize that there's something going on, and I get the power to choose. And I would rather operate from that place of choice where I am choosing how I want to show up, as opposed to just responding from a place of reaction, where I'm essentially abandoning myself in the moment. I'm abandoning myself to the inner child who's lashing out because the inner child says, well, this is the only way to handle situations. And I'll give an example. I used to respond to situations where when things would happen, I would push people away. I'd be like, this person doesn't really want me anyway, so I'm going to push them away. And that was my reaction. And this was a reaction based on feeling abandoned for much of my life. So when I realized that I felt that way, I also realized that I could make a different choice. I could choose to respond. So I started asking myself, what's the response I really would want to have? And the response is that I want to turn toward the other person. Maybe they said something in the moment and I need to call that out and say, hey, that's hurtful, or I need to assert some boundaries. But what I don't need to do is just push them away. That's the child in me lashing out, because that's the way the child's basically saying, okay, you're going to reject me anyway, so I'm going to reject you first so that I'm safe. The problem is that just leads to a very lonely life. And that's not really the kind of response I want to have. So look at your own situations. If you can, map out, think about a recent incident and map it out. Like, what was the reaction that you had? Was that the reaction you wanted? If you could choose a different response, what would the response be? And why? Why would you choose that response over the reaction that you had? You can't change what happened in the past, but what you can do is you can use that to start moving toward a different outcome. Because what you can do is you can say, okay, this is the outcome I would have liked to have had. And what I like to do in that kind of case is I like to rehearse it for a bit. What's the outcome that I want to have? So what I did with the situation where I tended to push people away is I started to say to myself, I don't really want to push this person away, but I'm afraid of being rejected. What I need to recognize, one, is that the perceived rejection probably has a lot less to do with me and more to do with whatever's going on with them. And secondly, that I get the power of choice. I get to choose how I respond. So I'm going to respond to this a bit differently. I'm going to say, I might just say, take a deep breath in, breathe out, and say, this isn't working for me. I need us to approach this in a different way. Here's what's coming up for me. Here's why. It doesn't have anything to do with you. But being able to break that down and being able to share from a really authentic and genuine and grounded way made a difference. So I think a lot of times we have to look at that. And even today, I'll use an example. Today, I've been sitting with a little bit of tension in my belly, a little bit of anxiety. And what I realized the anxiety is around is there's some things that I want to get done. And I'm like, I'm not getting certain things done. So I was like, well, what's the response I want to have here? I could react and get all stressed out about the things that I'm not getting done, that I think I'm not getting done, or I can choose a response. I can say, well, yes, I may not be getting all the things done that I think I need to get done. And I get to choose. What do I want to do? I was like, I want to enjoy the situation, the moment. I'm visiting with some people right now, and I want to enjoy that time. So I get the choice. I get to choose. And my choice to respond allowed me to enjoy that and allowed me to reparent the child. The child was like, you have to get all these things done. Well, where's that operating from? That's operating from a perception of trying to get approval, of not good enough, of I have to do all the things in order to show that I have worth, or that I have to, and there were some other reasons, but that was underneath those reasons was the core operating. And so I listened. And then what I said to the inner child is I said, look, here's what we'll do. We're going to spend some time doing some fun stuff. And then afterwards, we'll go and do one or two of the things that need to get done. And by choosing to do that, what I did is I let my inner child know that, okay, I heard him, I saw him, I gave him attention, and I reparented him. I set some boundaries and limits for myself. Something I find that I think is really relevant for men and women and really just people in general, but I think it's really relevant is that when we find ourselves reacting to the inner child, a lot of times one of the things we need to learn how to do is we need to learn how to set boundaries with ourselves as much as we need to set boundaries in the world around us. I mean, we hear all the time, like, oh, set better boundaries with people around you. But what about setting boundaries within ourselves? So one of the ways that I look at reparenting myself is I set some boundaries. And one of the ways that I set boundaries is I'll look at a situation and I'll say, well, what's really going on here? Oh, it's X, Y, and Z is coming up. So what if I choose to do something different for X, Y, and Z? What if I choose to give myself, in this case, as a response, which is like, I'm going to spend some time doing something fun. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a bit of time doing one of the things that I feel like I need to do that's important to me. I can go do that thing. So this is a good example of figuring these kinds of mechanics out and providing the inner boundaries that we need in order to help ourselves reparent ourselves and choose better responses to situations so that we're not reacting, we're not stressing out, we're not letting our nervous system or the amygdala or any of the other things call the shots. Instead, what we're doing is we're saying, what is the outcome I really want? Again, we're acknowledging what's going on, but we're doing it in a way where it's seen and it's heard, it's understood and respected without letting it take over and hijack everything. So these are just some of the things to be thinking about in your own work. And one of the invitations I would have for you is like, what could you do to set better boundaries with yourself so that you can choose very consciously the kinds of responses that you want to create in your life that help you manifest the outcomes that you're looking for, instead of continuing to operate from a place where your inner child is calling the shots and you're not necessarily having the boundaries that you need. So thanks for watching, and feel free to drop a comment, share some ideas or thoughts on your end around, reparenting, because this is an important topic, and I look forward to hearing from you. Take care and have a great day.